And we're back. Hello.
Welcome.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Jeff.
Together we are a small video podcast called What More Could You Want? And excuse me, right off the bat, I almost choked. Today we are joined by a good friend of ours. We've both Jeff and I have spent a generous amount of time with this man, this individual, and well, we like him enough that we want him to come and hang out with us even more. So he wears a few hats, and I'll tell you all about that here in a couple minutes. And yeah, besides that, how you doing today, man?
Can't complain. Been busy past couple of days, but
What's keeping you busy?
just work.
Yeah.
These new lifted restrictions, all good for the gym, but just chaos to follow the guidelines and keep everyone happy.
You able to do anything for you lately?
Breathe.
Yeah, well, hey, man.
Working out. Got to hang out with the fam this weekend. Nothing too stressful. It was good.
Right on, man. How about you, Nate?
Just continuing to rock out. It is really good to be able to see people because even we have had a lot of restrictions on what we do and how often we can see people and for what durations of time.
Right.
Because even the buildings that we're in, we can only have something like 25% capacity. So then it's like, well, who gets to see who and how frequently? So.
Oh, yeah. It is really neat to be around people. And I say neat because it's novel, right? Like,
Well,
I was given the option the other day to have medications from the VA mailed to me, or I could go pick them up. And I thought at first, I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to a hospital. And then I reconsidered. I was like, wait, I get to see people and interact and maybe feel a little better? Yeah, let's go do that.
yeah, I know. Some of our members haven't been to the gym since the class shut down back in November. So you're talking 2+ full months of not seeing their gym friends. And then some of them may not have seen their family through the holidays for safety. So it's like, it's seen some people come out of some shells, and they're like, oh, my God. It's like coming out of hibernation truly for humankind, for a lot of these people.
Totally. It is. It's weird, but it was good to feel it. Like it was, for me, when I went out the other day, it was good to have interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like it helped to bring me out of a funk I've been in that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
It really did help. And it's amazing how much I've told myself for years that I can do everything myself. I don't need anybody next to me, blah, blah, blah. All the shit that we tell ourselves. How fucking wrong I was. Mm-hmm. Like I told Lindsay, I told my wife, I told Lindsay that in almost tears, because as soon as I had the thought, my body felt the realization that how badly I miss hugs and handshakes. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's getting to a point to where I miss it like I miss a friend, because it is a friend. It's multiple, but
it's been a huge part of, culture.
Dude, and especially
handshake,
our
hugs.
culture, right? Whether it's the training or the fighting or the military or LE, we
Handshake, fist
love
bump.
hard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We really let people know, hey, I fucking love you. Give them a hug, do whatever.
Well,
we just haven't had it.
Jiu-jitsu is always slap hands, knucks, and then away you go.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you're going to do jiu-jitsu, you're still in contact, but,
Right.
those little simple things that you would do with people, or, nice to meet someone. Yeah, it's just like, hey, or the old tattoo, handshake is elbow it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, having said that, it sucks, but I hope that you guys are able to see some people out there. Go find somebody that wants you to be on their podcast or something. I don't know. Just get the hell out of the house. Go take a walk. Hopefully you can see somebody to say hi to, and
yell to your neighbor across the street.
And don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick about anything, Let people be whoever they're going to be. And I think it makes us all a better right?
Oh, very true.
So anyway, let me get to the task at hand. Mr. Nate Ferguson, welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, man. Been a long time. I don't even remember the last time I saw you.
know, right?
He told me, he's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, I know who Nate is.
Yeah, and I know. I told you like you didn't, and I knew that you did, but the way I wrote it, I was like,
dude, from the gym. And I'm like, man. Then I was like sitting here thinking, even today, I'm like, I can't even recall.
Yeah. Years.
Yeah, it's been a while. So anyway, we asked Nate to be on because we've known him for quite a few years, and he's well storied. He's well versed as well. So there's not a lot of people out there that I meet that have lived through it, have learned about it, and now talk about it, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Some of your best woodworkers out there are shit teachers, so they're lacking greatly, right? So anyway, not Nate. So Nathan is a well-educated man. He's a well-spoken man, and he's a young man. Nate, how old are you now?
35.
35. Awesome. I'd love to have those 9 years back. But anyway, man. So Nate decided to give service back to the people via the U.S. military for a while, and he'll talk about that, as well as law enforcement, which I thought was batshit crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think I was absolutely right that it was fucking crazy.
I think it was crazy at the time because this current scenario of law enforcement wasn't quite then what it was when you were going.
No, it was at the height of its craziness, right? I mean, I would think so. Well, I mean, it wasn't at like the whole Michael Brown thing and all that, but what I was honestly referring to was more of, I knew the Nate from the uniform and the stories, and I knew where you were, so I knew what happened. I knew what you did. To take that, which I hid from people because I was trying to lead people, and it didn't work out. Yeah, you were up front with it, talking about it, and I looked up to you for that, man. You were one of the first vets that I'd ever talked to that talked like me. And it was like, oh, holy shit, I found one of my own. It fucking smells just like me, you know? So anyway, man, I think that it was crazy because I don't think that you can be the best law enforcement officer or agent when you still have trauma to deal with. Right? You're getting thrown from one fire pit into another fucking fire pit. Right. So anyway, he did it, and I'm sure you did it well. But it wasn't that long ago that I talked to him, and he was totally done with that. And now he is helping people via mentorships and coaching to realize their full potential. So if you notice a trend here, service, always to others, service. So today we hope to touch on your service to others, but also your service to yourself, because on this show, we really like to find out, are there better ways to sort of hack ourselves, whether it be to fucking sleep better, or to be a better husband, you know, or a better friend or whatever. So, I'd love to touch on that today. So let's go backwards. Let's go back to the beginning, man. What, I want to know why in the hell you chose to go do what you did in the Army. Yeah. So it really began in high school. I remember I was in, I think, my sophomore year when 9/11 happened, and they rolled in the TVs and we watched it there on TV. And a lot of my closer friends enlisted after that, and they went off straight out of high school. And some of them even started participating in earlier delayed entry programs while we're in high school. So I was already training and going to PT like that before school with the military and some of the people before soccer practice and all this stuff. So I had an opportunity to go to college for free, and so I chose it. And my plan was to enter military service after that, and I did. And so you went in as an officer, correct? Yeah, so I went in as an officer. Right. That's cool. I'm not holding it against you. I know. Just want to be clear, the kind of person we got here today. Yeah. So I was blessed. I had enough points, and I competed enough to get a slot in the infantry as an officer, because you're not guaranteed that stuff. So I was in the infantry, and I went to Afghanistan. I was with 4th Brigade, 10th Mountain Division. We were a brigade combat team, and I was in Southern Logar specifically for a year, and was doing platoon leader infantry stuff and then civil affairs stuff, which is contracts. So it was really interesting. I got to be up front, but then I got to see the backdrop of all the money and where it goes and how it works and what's kind of how those two things balance out. So fast forward, I leave Afghanistan, I leave the military. I was kind of floating around, had saved money, and was doing I had a bunch of CrossFit certifications, so I was doing personal training and CrossFit style stuff out of a gym of a veteran, an Army veteran. And so I kind of got to do whatever I want, and it was a really good fit for me. But one of my clients was the sheriff of my hometown. And so he, one day we were training, and he's like, "Hey man, you want a job?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I thought he wanted me to work in the jail or something. I was like, "I don't know. I might go to the federal prison. I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm going to do." And he said, "No, I got some money, and we can send you to cop school
you can go be a cop. And so I was like, well, I don't really want to leave for 6 months and go through that. So I went to this cop school that was 12 weeks and knocked it out and became a deputy. And it was awesome. And right there is whenever the tables really started to shift for me. I started out on days because a lot of the cops there at the time wanted the night shift, and that was cool. First 6 months, fine. And then I got onto night shift, and things started to happen. Like, I started responding on scene, and just being in the dark in a car with my body armor on and a pistol and in that environment was just tripping triggers that didn't need to be tripped.
Dude, I knew it.
Yeah.
I used to wonder all the time about that with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good. I was right.
Yeah. And so I, very specifically, I mean, I'll be super blunt. One of the biggest issues, and whenever I realized that I couldn't rationalize what was going on anymore, was that I would have these I'd have flashbacks, but also I would have, I forget, it was like a dissociative episode where I would have this imagination of something very, very violent happening. And it's the way I was dealing with stress. So some people might deal with stress and they have this violent dream or nasty dream. Well, I was having that while I was awake, and I wasn't able to control it. And I would realize I was acting out this violent thing against this person that maybe even be a victim on scene that I need to be helping. And I would be embarrassed and ashamed. And I would be like, man, I don't want to be thinking those thoughts. Like, I have a big heart. I want to help these people. And so I would busy myself with something else. But as soon as my mind went idle, I'd jump right back in where I left off in that nasty series of events that was usually very, very vivid, but very brutal.
Sure.
And so I was realizing that I couldn't control this, and that this wasn't a good thing, and it wasn't good for longevity. I was still very young in my policing career. And so I was faced with some hard truths very, very fast that I knew that some of my other buddies had some issues, but I viewed myself as assertive, not aggressive. And so I was constantly telling me this. But also I knew that my sheriff was also, he did some special operations stuff in the Air Force, has done super duper stuff. So, I mean, 32 years as a sheriff, 21 years in the military, transferred over to the Army, infantry, did a whole bunch of awesome stuff. I'm actually meeting with him next Thursday,
Nice.
Still catching up. He's doing super special stuff everywhere. It's really cool. But I knew that he had my back. Mm-hmm. And I knew he wrote letters of recommendation for me to get into the military because I had a couple of prior arrests.
Right.
He had always been there for me and always super helpful and had always been very transparent. And so I talked to him about these things, and he's like, look, man, I've seen this for years and decades, and you got to do what you got to do. And you've got a job here, man, and I got your back. And so I really just started being open and hitting these things head on and talking about it and being far more blunt about it.
Right.
And talking a whole bunch of shit all the time. And I eventually got more and more responses from people. But fast forward, I knew there wasn't much promotability and money in the job that I was doing, and I didn't want to transfer to a larger city. I figured that I would go into the Marshal Service because again, you know people, right?
Yeah.
And so I had some connections in the Marshal Service. That was my plan, but I figured in lieu I needed a breather and I needed to figure my shit out. So I'd go get a master's degree. Worst case scenario, I take 2 years, I use my GI Bill, financially secure, and at the end of that 2 years, if I don't figure it out, I'll just go into the Marshal Service and rock out. So things started to get real so I got a master's in social work in my social work program because you can, in that particular program, it's not all these tests, it's more about self-reflection and seeing what is going on with you and applying those rationales to how the issues play out in the diversified communities, how social workers can help, right? So I was focusing on veterans for 2 years and doing research about veterans for 2 years. And I was learning, as I was looking at PTSD, that I had an awful lot of these themes and similarity. And so finally, we all know Alan.
Oh, yeah.
Alan, every day, every time I would see him in the gym, and of course we're going to the gym every day, he was a veteran service officer, and his brother was a VSO too, and so he knew these things, and he just pecked away. It was very casual. We'd be stretching out or warming up. Hey, Ferg, how's your sleep been? How's your stress? Oh, you've lost half your hearing. You can get paid for that, and every day for months, you can get paid for that. So finally, I was like, "Shut up, Alan. Fine, I'll go to the VA. Set me up an appointment with your brother." He did, and his brother went down the list: physical health issues, hearing, but then he got to mental health, and he's talking about PTSD. I was like, Dan, let me just stop you right there. I ain't got PTSD. And so he was a sergeant in the Army. He put down his paperwork, and he had a hard truth conversation. A come to Jesus meeting with me and just talked a whole lot of shit, told me how it was, and told me to go execute. And I went and executed and went to my appointments. Yeah. And lo and behold, I get my paperwork back, and the VA diagnosed me with PTSD, secondary depression, and substance abuse disorder, and gave me a disability rating. And then later on, I was diagnosed also with obsessive compulsive disorder, right, which actually wasn't the acting out stuff. Mm-hmm. Obsessive compulsive disorder were those crazy, violent thoughts that I was having, these obsessive thoughts that would leave me wrapped in, it would they would come over me and not let go. Yep. And I would just run with them, and it's like they were chasing me and I couldn't get away from them. Yeah. Kind of thing. Yeah. And so,
I can feel you. I just want you to know I've been there as well. The ruminating thoughts that just don't ever stop. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I'm just now learning how to deal with those demons. Mm-hmm. Not easy. So good on you.
Yeah. So it was good. It drugged me. The adversity, like all adversity, kind of at least gives us the opportunity to drag us further, deeper into ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it essentially, you know, one thing I am always ranting about is that any issue that we have, internal or external, is a reflection of an underdeveloped character trait. And so then adversity just highlights those underdeveloped character traits, which aren't weak things. They're just underdeveloped. They need to be trained, disciplined, and developed. And so essentially, very much like the Stoic philosophy, the problem, the adversity is the way. Yes. It is the blueprint. Yeah. And so following that inward, it drugged me inward. And of course, I've always had a penchant to not like authority. And so I made a deep commitment to my then girlfriend, my now wife, that I would go to therapy. And I tried 3 or 4 counselors and therapists and never made it more than 2 or 3 sessions before. My goal was always 4. I got to go to at least 4 to give them a fair chance. But in my opinion, I had a chip on my shoulder, and I just thought they were full of shit, and I was ready to tell them that they were full of shit.
Yeah, that was just your way of setting a boundary for yourself.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Don't go past 4, buddy.
Yeah.
Common build wall up and stay behind it.
Yeah. And so as troubling, as challenging as that was, it forced me to be very radically, I like to call it radically honest with myself, because the more you can do self-reflection, the more you can build out your awareness, and nothing changes without awareness. So the more awareness you have, the more perspective you have, the more pieces of your puzzle you're playing with. So a limited awareness is like you have a dozen pieces of your puzzle, but you got 100 pieces for your life, and you're literally narrowed view choosing to only focus on these 12, whereas we need to constantly be in a state of reflection of why did I say that? Why did I think that? Why did I feel that? What was that reaction? What was that action? What is this all about? And follow those roots down into that kind of subconscious programming model, those natural biases and attitudes, and really figure out what it's all about. So I continued on that, and basically I found some powerful tools that were very, very helpful. So my initial failure to be receptive to someone else's guidance was not in vain, because it forced me to sink or swim. And I was very, very highly motivated to swim. Because again, on the outward appearances, I was very, very successful. But it wasn't so.
And now at this point, let's make sure everybody knows where we are. How old are you when you're starting to go through this?
So I entered military at, like 23, late 22, probably like 23 years old.
Right.
and was in the military for 4 years. So 27, I'm getting out. So most of age 27, I'm out and rocking and rolling as a cop. I'm a cop for a couple of years and transition into school. I do school for a couple of years. And so right when I was figuring out my pieces of my puzzle and beginning to create massive success, I was 28. So that's 7 years ago.
Right.
And so for me, for whatever reason, I was very, very receptive to meditation. Initially, I was trained in transcendental meditation, which is a mantra-based meditation, which to explain a little bit, the mantra is repeated by essentially the left brain control, looking at that linear mantra going iteration, iteration, iteration. The right brain observes that iteration, and the two begin to sync together, which even EMDR does. And when they sync together at a certain point, they hit a tipping point where then your consciousness turns inward and you meditate. You get into a deeper state. And that was very, very powerful for me in relieving these stresses. And whenever you get in those deep states, if in front of you, your eyes, there's a horizontal line, and below that is your subconscious. You dip into the subconscious, and you bring that calmness and that deep inner peace into that subconscious, and you begin repairing and reprogramming those negative tendencies that essentially house things like PTSD and anxiety, or however we want to describe it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that anxiety plays a big role in PTSD. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, now I only know it my way.
Yeah.
But, that's, as far as I'm concerned, they're one and the same.
Lots of different strokes. And even now there's this moral injury that kind of is the mistress to PTSD, and it gets convoluted. But anyways, that was super powerful for me, so much so it was like I took a right turn, and in weeks I was making massive changes. But I was also kind of starting to see stuff in meditation and even in my physical life that I couldn't explain, and that the transcendental meditation community didn't seem to be able to readily explain in simple terms that I could grasp. And so my mother is very mystical, and she got into this energy healing thing, and I was like, and she kept bugging me like, Alan, just wearing me down. Yeah. And so finally I was like, fine, take me to this person, but make sure this person is awesome. And this person was awesome. Her name is Julie. She's local. She's a therapist, but she's like this little Duracell battery. She's just super powerful. So I was very, I had a chance to see Obama speak in Afghanistan, and he was very charismatic. And regardless of our opinions politically, he was a fantastic speaker, and it was super crazy cool.
Right.
And so actually one of my first thoughts whenever I saw her was that her energy, her mentality, her ability to communicate reminded me of that particular experience. And I was sitting there kind of absorbing this, and essentially I bought into her more than what she was saying. And so I actually, and I'll sum it up here, I actually went and I learned this energy healing tool, and I had a lot of GI issues. Those are all my mental health issues. I had a lot of physical health issues, and still working through some physical health issues, but a lot of them were GI related. And one of the primary symptoms that brought me to my knees and made me go seek help, because of course I refused to go to the doctor, was severe constipation, as it was written in my chart, which was very, very painful. And so in Pranic healing, you learn over a weekend, and you do instruction and then practical application. So you're experiencing it in class. It's very experiential. And so the first hour we're learning, the second hour, within 2 minutes, we're applying these techniques, and all of a sudden I feel something in my gut drop down. It was like a baseball. If I could even see it, it looked like this bloody baseball had been ripped out of my intestines, and it dropped down and then had been removed. And all of a sudden I felt this warm rush of blood, it seemed, into my GI system, and it seemed good. It was warm. It was like a positive, relieving experience. But it really startled me, of course. And so then I, of course, needed to use the restroom.
Of course, yeah.
And so this is getting towards the noontime lunch. And so I was the whole lunchtime, like 80 minutes in the restroom, releasing my bowels, right?
Right.
Which was a fantastic period to reflect on the porcelain throne, right? And so I had to reconcile in my mind that this thing, because Pranic healing is a no-touch healing modality, no one was touching my body. They were applying these simple techniques, even within the first couple of minutes, and I was having this major response to it. But yet, at the same time, it seemed to kind of explain and go in with what I was experiencing partially in meditation. So,
yeah, so you have to buy in at this point.
yeah, because I was physically there, right?
Yeah.
And it was undeniable, right?
Right.
And so I bought in hard and just accepted it, didn't understand it. Even today, whenever I do pranic healing, it's still very surprising to me. And I still, even in the back of my mind, doubt it from time to time. It just is what it is. But it's fantastic, man. And at the same time, I'm a therapist by now and working with veterans. And some veterans come in and I just don't know what to do. Like you said earlier, most therapy, you didn't say this, but you were talking about trying to understand things, and that's great. Cognitive therapy, the primary their therapeutic modality is cognitive therapy or prolonged exposure therapy, primarily for veterans and trauma at least, is that this top-down approach from cognitive, again, if you have the line of consciousness in front of your eyes horizontally, above is your conscious mind, so you're working through cognitive therapy, trying to shift stuff to drive it down into your subconscious mind to reprogram it. Well, that top-down approach doesn't seem to be very effective. There are some fantastic therapists in the VA, and I love them, and I love cognitive therapy. It's my jam. Rational emotive behavioral therapy especially is my jam, but I have found that the bottom-up approach, using yoga or using where do you feel stress in your body and working from that angle, or using at least energy healing modalities that have a track record with people that have a good track record of using those and producing specific and consistent results, seems to be the warp speed healing process, putting Humpty Dumpty back together again.
I agree 100%. Jeff, I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
But I think the barrier there is that you may have a lot of these doctors or these physicians or these therapists that practice in these ways that we all buy into, but they can't do it if the person doesn't come through the door.
Right.
So
Very true.
The problem right now, at least that I see in the foreseeable future, is getting people to just open their mind and think that there may be another way.
Yeah.
That's it. All you got to think is there might be another way to do this. Maybe this whole fucking thing that I've been doing, this whole basket I've been weaving, is not the right fucking basket for me.
I think that's big with getting into a lot. We're talking about meditation and, getting into different types of energies. Like a lot of people don't think about the full Eastern side of things is that's been around longer than we've existed in this Western. Now, obviously, Indians have been on this, Native Americans have been in our land for years and years, but you go back to early man, it stems from the East.
Yeah.
Predating Christ, going way, way, way back. All these teachings, these things have been taught, and then people read about it, like a lot of the different things, like Lao Tzu talks about with Taoism and different things to do with nature and positions and stretches outside. It's different things, like there's stretches to engage the GI tract, like the kidney rubs to sit here and do your kidneys and, certain positions, like all these funny little things that, you're like, I can't work. Well, obviously, if it's like 10,000 years old and medicine that we have today didn't exist, something had to have worked.
Well, the pharmaceuticals and the therapy.
It's the very hard part of the modern mind to open up to something outside of modern medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, there's also a lot of money and a big push coming from the other direction. You've got, what you need is more pain management. What you need is more physical therapy. What you need is this. And the motherfuckers never get any better.
Right.
Because they never take care of this up here. They never get that left and that right to become harmonious, even for a moment. Even if you can only get there one time in a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of the time you're trying.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's my point, is the problem is I don't think there's enough people right now getting that inertia behind them by themselves. Right. Because you, I, or Jeff could not walk into anybody's house in this world and tell them, hey, your life could be better if you do these things. Let's go do them. And he's going to get better. No. Because what if he wasn't ready yet? Or she? What if they just hadn't fallen down hard enough yet?
Be that snap of do these 5 things and magically, it's these 5 things you have to do day in, day out,
right,
over and over to create that habitual habit.
And if somebody hasn't spent 6 months inside their house, afraid to go out because of how they feel or how they're afraid to feel or whatever it is that's keeping them all bundled up, then they can't speak to the hurdles to that next person after they get better. That's why I see and listen to a lot of people online that talk all this talk, but I never hear their story. I never hear their pain story. What got you to fall down? How did you hit your head? What made you different? Because living in this world, in our society as we are now, You could go on forever in that machine. You could go on forever clicking the clicks and doing the things that everybody else is doing and be happy.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this. So I say again, more people need to stop feeling comfortable and start feeling what they really feel.
Yeah.
You know, walk through the door, find those therapists, find those physicians that don't just say, oh, you need to go get some fucking opioids or you need to go do this or do that, right? It's a different world where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You know,
and if
but a welcome one.
Yeah. And if that person or those people, for example, they try, then the ownership is on them. They have to take responsibility to then reflect and discern, especially with something like cognitive therapy or energy healing or meditation. They have to reflect and think back. Did that have an effect? And was that effect long lasting? Did it add value to my life? Does it days later, weeks later, months later continue to add value to my life? What is that? That ownership and responsibility, that's a huge, huge thing. And people have to learn to own that and stop. They simultaneously kind of want their cake and to eat it too. They want society to stop being this particular way and doing all these things, but yet they won't go out and do the hard work, the legwork, and it doesn't have to be this laborious thing. They have to have an open mind and an eager heart.
Yeah, man.
And they're going to get tossed around, and the thicket's going to be here and there, and you're going to run into people that are ineffective, but those people, everybody, stop listening to their words and listen to their actions.
Yeah. And you got to stop being afraid of divorcing people.
Yeah.
And stop being afraid of divorcing your fucking ideas. You're not married to any of this shit.
Right.
You know, and these people, like I've got a great friend who contacted my wife because I just turned him off completely. I turned him off because I had seen the racism, the homophobia. I saw the Southern, like crazy Baptist type of mentality come out of him. And I just started seeing more and more of it. And I say, fuck, man, I fucking love this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I love him. But do I love him enough to cut him out of my life so maybe he realizes that something's wrong?
Yeah.
Because I can't just tell him. You guys know, you can't just tell a motherfucker, hey, you got a problem. Because he's going to bow up, he's going to puff up, he's going to get angry.
That right moment of when they're in that kind of vulnerable spot where that input actually goes through.
Yeah, like when
That's the
that
hardest
sine
part
wave just dips just a little bit.
To go back with Nate saying on ownership, you know, most people, and I'm guilty of it, we all are. It's like, oh, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, shit, yeah, it is. You know, it's the hardest thing to admit, you know.
Yeah. A
good book. You know, I'm not promoting, but Jocko Willnick's book, Extreme Ownership.
I love that book. Yeah.
It's a simple, well, all of his books are pretty great, you know, but it's simple in that fact of, you know, if something falters down the line, for like me being the one in control of this, you know, entire health club, it's my fault if something doesn't get done. And I've messed some things up. I'm like, oh man, like the other day I sent out like this big memo to, you know, almost 1,000 people. And I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be the 3rd. I put the 6th. Oops. And people called, oh, hey, sorry about that, guys. I just put the wrong day down and sent it out. And it's, you know, it's my fault. And, you know, I'm getting over and over people, hey, you mean the 3rd or what? You mean the 6th? Because the 3rd's Wednesday. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like you just go through the motion. It's like, you know, that's minor in the blip. I'm like, oh, my fault. But yeah, it was my fault. I was trying to get it done quick and definitely. But it's those little things that if you can come to your ownership, I think people under me will go, okay, well, he messed up. He admits it. Yeah. And it's easier. I think it's a harder thing. You're not always wanting to admit when you're wrong, but if you can own up, yep, sorry, I skipped that detail. Yeah. That's my fault. And I think that's a lot more people need to kind of find that in life. If you can take responsibility even for the small stuff, it's a lot easier if you do mess up on something bigger to be like, yeah.
It's a building process, and it's an unearthing process as well in the reverse, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can't have one without the other. Mm-hmm. Not at all. Yeah. So.
And the more time you give somebody is all the more opportunity for life to come after him.
Well, and like, going back to what you talked about Alan, because we all know Alan.
Of course, and his brother.
I've had I don't think I've ever met Alan. Maybe he may have come to the gym before.
Well, we'll get to him after you tell your story, because I got a great one.
I just remember Dan. With Alan, you know, always in his persistent ways, and the few times I've been around Coach, because when we coached together, I always was day and afternoon. Alan had already come and gone. You know, but the few times like he'd ask members and like, you know, members be like, oh, I'm fine. It's like we had those members would be like, how you doing today? Good. Did you eat? Oh, yeah. And you're warming up, you're watching them. Did you really eat? Not like, And I always remember Alan with all the members who had like nagging things, or the people who would forget to eat, or had other issues, had some medical issues that we had to watch out for. He would always be like, hey, and he would keep going and going and going. And that's something I learned as a coach too. Like, you know, with a client, I always tell like my new trainers at the gym, be a detective. Ask as many questions as you can. Even if you got to ask them over and over again, they might get annoyed, but eventually you will get the answer that you're seeking.
Yeah.
They won't give it to you at first. And that's something I always saw Alan do too with the members, is like, he'd always ask him, and he'd be in class working out, and eventually he'd get it. It's like,
yeah,
but you can't quit on him.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to do.
Alan's brother, Dan, also walked me through my process with the VA on my second or third time. Like, I had gone through different levels or whatever ratings, but when the shit really hit the fan with my PTSD and my OCD and my anxiety and all this other bullshit, I'll never forget. It actually happened a little prior to this. Even it was almost like he saw the writing on the wall, and he had told me a few times when I'd seen him out that, hey man, you need to get in my office. You got my number, call me. Blah blah blah. All right, man. Yeah, I'll do that. Never get around to it. Never make it a priority. So one night I'm at my favorite spot in Collinsville, this place called Hurricanes, and if you're local, check them out. They're fantastic. But anyway, I'm standing at the bar and it's busy, and I know a lot of people there. It's always like a class reunion combined with maybe some people that you probably shouldn't be hanging out with, you know, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, and I fucking love it, and I miss it like hell right now. So I'm standing there and I'm waiting for a drink for both myself and my wife. And my wife is with some other friends or something. And all of a sudden, that feeling that you mentioned earlier, when that energy, when you know something is right and something is real. I had somebody put their hand on my shoulder or my trap, and it felt like maybe if somebody was trying to get out of a rear naked and they're just grasping for life at the end, you just like it's just this grip, right? That's what I felt, but it was in a fatherly way. And I turned around and it's Dan. And you know, if you don't know Dan, he talks with the deepest damn voice you've ever heard. So, you know, this grimy, just thick voice is amazing. He says, you still haven't come to my fucking office. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
You're right. And he goes, this is the last time I tell you, you're cheating you and you're cheating your entire goddamn family. He said, get your ass in my office. And on fucking Monday, I was on the phone with him. When can I come in?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
But, you know, to know somebody that's that steadfast in their concern for another person's well-being, that I hope that dude, let's put it this way, I hold space in that guy in my heart forever. Forever. And you know, you don't have that many people that you'll do that for.
Yeah.
But that dude, he will find a way to get you to realize that you are wrong. And he found it. You know, and he told me. And I listened, thank God.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
You know, he will do amazing things. And then when I did fall down hard and ended up in the hospital, he was there for me again. You know, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And, you know, he's been promoted many times. He doesn't have to be that voice. He doesn't have to be that guy, but he makes sure you get in and he'll walk it through. You know, it's pretty humbling, but it's fucking fantastic.
It's few and far between people who will, I say this in a good way, pester you to stay on you to do something. You know, like, you only got so many breaths in your body, and think of the person like the realm you're in, Dan's in, that you help these people. You can, how many breaths you're wasting of your life. I'm saying this in a good way, that shows how much they care, that they're taking that extra time to constantly voice this when they can be like, I'm tired of wasting my breath on you, on to the next person. Because
it's not hard to do.
In your world, it could just be a numbers game. Because there are some people that it's not about helping people. I got 100 clientele in and out the door. Let's just get this revolving door. Because, you can make a ton of money.
Well, it can be exhausting, too.
It could be,
People tend to overdo that, and then they get burnt out.
Well, then you're not giving the people that you intended to help the true nature. But it's like what you're saying. You're taking the time of asking. And that's when you know you got somebody good sitting across from you or whatever who is trying to get to the deeper root of the issue, because they're, why do you keep asking me this? You know?
Yeah.
But that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing when you start noticing what it takes and noticing the changes in yourself and then you notice the behavior changes on the, externally. I'll sit down and watch a movie or a documentary or something, and I can fill in the gaps in the plot just based on the character traits of the actor or actress.
Yeah.
And I find myself doing it way too often.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
But it's so easy to see because now you're like, fuck, that was me.
Yeah.
Like that is me. And I still struggle with it. Or, fuck, I worked on that so hard 2 years ago or whatever it is. And it never gets told. They never say it. But if you know, you just fucking know. You see it and you're like, wow, this fucking they're getting it. Or this person is fucking not getting it. Whatever it might be, So, all right. So let's hop back in here because we sort of got off track, but that was good. I like it. How'd you end up at the VA then? And I mean, like doing the support group thing that I first went in whenever you were down in French Village.
Yeah. And so first, what I'm saying here is of no representation of one of my employers, the VA.
Right. Of course.
So,
yeah. It's just a story.
I actually, they call it practicum or internship. We have to go out as potentially new social workers and work in the community and earn experience and serve. And so I had no idea what services were at the VA. I just kind of stumbled into this place that was geographically the closest place to where I lived.
Right.
And it was a place, a mental health outpatient care unit that's actually separate from the VA hospitals that specifically is geared towards serving combat veterans. So that it's not all combat vets, but the majority, their mission or whatever is combat veterans. But they're sort of like the last stop shop for veterans that they run the gauntlet of VA, and the VA, especially in mental health, uses almost all standardized therapy modalities, which are like you get 12 weeks of this and then you're done. We're going to set some goals and execute, and then we're going to be done. You go live your life. You may be able to come back later for another series of treatment. Whereas the vet centers is where I work. They are more of a catch-all. There's no end date, and that can be positive. There's positive and negatives to each. I love focused work, but I also love constant and knowing support like many people need. There's a need for both of them. So I actually started working there as a volunteer, and they took a liking to me, and so they just straight hired me. Interestingly, before I even graduated, so I worked full-time there as a therapist before I graduated. I had a year left of school, so I was very blessed and very lucky because I graduated with a year of experience and money, right? I was getting paid a federal job. I got to buy back my military, do all this great stuff. But it was huge experience. So, I mean, literally, I've been serving veterans in a mental health clinical profession since like 2014 or 15 or something.
All right.
And it was very challenging at first because, of course, I was still working through a lot of my own particular issues, and I continue to work through my issues, but it was really, I was fresh out of the military, fresh out of being a cop. Still, I just got this opportunity, so I was just going to do it. Still maybe going to go screw it and just pull the ripcord and peace out and go to the marshals. I don't know what's going to happen. So still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Don't really care. I'm just there. And I don't really, at the time, I didn't really give a shit about the standard operating procedures or anything. I was just coming in hot. That shit doesn't, like, I was a little bit too blunt. Like, hey, veteran, that shit doesn't make sense. Tell me, A plus B does not equal C in this equation. Right. You say you want C, but what you're thinking and saying and doing. And so essentially, as I was helping people, I was kind of helping myself. I would hear this pearl of wisdom, and not that I'm intelligent, I don't know where it came from, come out of my mouth that was not mine. The shit would just come out of my mouth, and I would be like, son of a bitch. Like, I can't say that and then not act on it.
I was just going to ask that, how many times you helping somebody did it start to correlate back to you going, shit, I need to do this. This is what I need.
Yeah. Sometimes the therapists are getting the therapy too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even the cool thing is that my not that it matters, but rational emotive behavioral therapy is my favorite modality. And Albert Ellis is supposed to be the father of cognitive psychology. And what he says is learn it, his words, learn it and practice it while you're even working on your own issues. Like other people that are certified or whatever, they don't have that crap figured out. And he was taking more of a soulful perspective. And what a lot of people don't know is he studied a lot of Buddhism and a lot of Stoic philosophy and drafted cognitive therapy a lot out of Buddhism that has a lot of principles of answering the question of what is suffering, why are we suffering, and how can we remove that suffering. It's a very mental religion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the stuff that I read. That fascinates me more so than anything because it's such a difficult but simple way of thinking.
Right.
It's very difficult in the rationality.
Yeah.
It's like a 4-word question, but God, you could write a book.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. And so cognitive therapy, as we understand it today, is an offshoot of it. And to, again, just explain a little background of why even like energy healing may seem taboo in Eastern, but why cognitive therapy and prolonged exposure therapy are so much on the forefront. I'm actually getting a certification right now through Dr. Bessel. He's the guy that wrote The Body Keeps a Score. Heard of that book?
Yeah.
Super popular. Anyways, he talks about, so I think he's 70 or mid-70s or something. So he was there whenever the Bible of all mental health diagnoses, and not to get so specific and boring, but he was there in 1980 when the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which houses all of the mental health, which is the first time PTSD was PTSD.
Yep.
And so PTSD was born essentially in our Western culture in 1980 through that book, because that's what doctors use to diagnose people. And so he states, and he read it very clearly from an actual book in the training that I'm watching and working through, that in the prologue, before they even get into the specifics, this information should never be used for insurance purposes. This information should not, this is a bunch of generalities. These are just things that we've observed. This is in no way, shape, or form something that should be written in stone. We hesitate to even write, he went on to explain, we hesitate to even write and certify this book because we don't want it to become something it's not, but right now it's just this reference book.
Yeah.
And so that is now gone in the 3 other editions that they have published, and the insurance companies ran away with this model of condensing therapy into a box set of sessions that and again, there's pros to it. We can remove certain tendencies and reduce symptoms and show the efficacy or the truth or the validity of it, and that's good and positive and healthy. But because the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies have so much money, they're the ones that are founding. So even a 100-person study might cost $1 million. And you really need a 500-person study to say anything about anything. Right. And so unless you got $5 million, the shit isn't going to happen. And so he goes on this big rant. You can tell he's very, very biased towards that. Be careful what you read. Basically, he's saying it's all bullshit and go with what you feel. And he's a big proponent actually of EMDR and yoga and these different things. But that, again, all these things just seem to be attracted to me and learn this and really embolden me to say these things, to preach this message. And again, which is one of the offshoots of my coaching practice, because I want to help more and more veterans on a larger and larger platform and get this information to them, because it's so powerful. And it's not that they need to drink my Kool-Aid, but they need to know that different types of Kool-Aid are available to them.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. And wouldn't it be neat if our physicians and doctors and psychiatrists, psychologists were required to go east for a work study program, just like they're required to do internships or whatever they are, residencies. Go east and learn Eastern medicine. It doesn't mean you have to come back and practice it.
Right.
But you need to know that it's there and be able to tell a patient, hey, listen, this hasn't been working, but there's this other thing you might want to check into. Yeah. Right? That should be available. I mean, I just don't understand why we've created these fucking silos. Mm-hmm. I know why they do it in the military. It's fucking pride and ego and all that shit.
We want to be a society of, it's got to fit the box.
That's very true.
It's never the fact that, oh, you don't fit this box. Okay, let's go to box B, C. Our society wants you have to fit into this. It doesn't go, okay, well, Nate, I don't know how many sessions. All right, I'll see you. Here we are 10 years later, and we're still working together. Mm-hmm. Maybe here you are 2 years later, and you're gone. Here I am, and I'm 7.
Right.
They don't want to assume that you're going to fit into some, different category. Oh, well, you're just part of this group.
Yeah.
It's easier to clump people together than just look at them individualistic and find out what is your problem and go this way.
Yeah.
That's everything, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's the same thing. Talking with the guy at the gym. Oh, yeah, this and this. And it's like, yeah, your doctor told you this, and yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
He got leg pain, this and that. He goes, oh, they probably say it's a hip. Well, do they do any tests like MRI, CT? Like, what do they do? Oh, he did a few things and probably says I'm bone on bone. I'm like, oh, yeah. And you're telling this dude he needs a hip replacement, and you didn't even do x-rays. And, I don't know if the guy had it done or not, but I'm like, it doesn't shock me if they were quick to, let's get you into the specialist and get you hacked
Two
open.
things there, though. Absolutely. Doctors do it every day. We've seen it. I'm sure all of us have seen it.
I've been a part of it.
Totally, me too.
Yep.
But I also know people that will say shit that is so far from the fucking truth, but they just say it because that's how they want to fucking say it. So somebody comes up to one of the three of us and starts spewing some shit, and it's like, okay, well, let's go back to the old adage. It's your way, their way, and then the truth.
Yeah.
Right? So the same way, these fucking people, I see it a lot with older people, and I mean older, I would consider elderly, that just say whatever they want to fucking say because they want to get the end result.
Yeah.
And they don't want to fucking fluff it. They don't do anything. I'm just going to tell you what you want to fucking hear. Give me what I want.
It might come with age, though. You just don't get.
I think it does. That's what I'm getting at.
I got a few people at work that just, they got into, to get off sidetrack real quick. We're not going to dive in it, but got into the debate. 2 people got the vaccine. Oh, you're fucking idiots. Why would you do such a thing? And she's probably a similar age.
Yeah.
And another guy goes, yeah, you're all idiot. I'm like, where do you stand? I have no opinion on this because I'm not getting in the middle of this.
Yeah, and you know what? Neither should you guys.
And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Good for you. Let them be. You have your opinion. You were out the door and you heard that and you literally stopped. You could have just kept walking.
Yeah.
But you stopped because you had to be a part of the conversation. It's just like, God.
Yeah.
But it's as
Dude,
people, man.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes to sit back and watch that behavior go down because, again, you're aware of it. You see it, and you're just like, this is so overdone right now. You have cooked your fucking egg way too long. You should have stopped moments ago,
But that's the people that are still frying that same egg and they're 70, 80 years old or whatever, or even younger, but they will not stop. Everything exists in this pan. Nothing else exists outside of it.
Well, just think of that, though. I mean, I know exactly why they're like it now. They've had way more generations under their belt that taught them that.
Yeah.
And so now the way that we teach our kids is totally fucking different than what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, even some people would say to a detriment, whatever, we're learning, right? Just like they were. But they had the more stern approach. And before them, even more stern. And even before them, it was fucking life or death.
That's true.
You listen to mom and dad or you fucking die.
Yeah.
Right? And we're not that far removed from that.
Yeah.
Not that far at all.
No.
It's fucking scary.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why older people are so fucking vicious and mean sometimes, because that's what they had to do. I don't know.
In their whole life, they weren't allowed to express themselves, right?
Oh,
That's true.
Not at all.
There's generations of not allowing. Yeah.
No expressions from the last couple generations. Really,
What are emotions?
I think our parents were the first ones to really start like getting that shit out there, right? And
I'd say, and probably going like you're saying from the 80s, if that's when PTSD became a actual labeled term.
Yeah.
You're getting Vietnam vets having probably the height of their PTSD, symptoms kicking in, and finally, oh, you have this, you have this, you have this, you have this. This sounds similar to what Grandpa had from Korean War or World War II or
Shell
whatever.
shock, battle fatigue.
Yeah.
Think about how much longer that would have taken, though, for a young lady who might have been raped or something violent like that. They're not being brought in on a massive scale like veterans were.
Right.
No,
so it took them even fucking longer to realize,
since the existence of mankind. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fucking frightening
Well,
stuff,
to think
dude.
back like in Aurelius's time that those guys had PTSD, but those guys probably wrote it because obviously they were higher of a caliber, but the rest of their men that were out to battle.
Yeah.
Go that way.
There's a lot of interesting research about physically moving the body too, though, that walking back from battle, that literally on the nervous system energetic level, all these issues are being stored and trapped inside of the nervous system that interrupts and disables the organ system from operating properly, the endocrine system, and our endocrine system affects our capacity to feel and think. The quality of our hormonal secretions produced out of the endocrine system is the quality of our mind, is the quality of our thoughts. And so it all kind of tracks back to the nervous system, sympathetic, all these different aspects of the nervous system. And what they're seeing is that things like yoga, for example, the stretching combined with breathing and transferring that while holding your focus on these particular things is this physical hatha yoga, the meditative part. It brings you more into yourself, and you're actually loosening up these traumas and these negative tendencies or even biases and negative attitudes, and you're getting rid of them. So again, kind of thinking back to walking back, marching back to their people, to their families. They might have a 2-year trek ahead of them, and they got plenty of time to jack around and screw around and talk about it or think about it and walk and all this different
stuff. A lot
stuff.
of time with your thoughts.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of time, and also a lot of distraction, right? And sometimes you need that while you're healing.
Yeah.
And you've got to walk around a ravine or through gravel or whatever you're doing back then. I don't even know. It's got to be a great way to cope.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because, big thing is, you said, and numerous people who suffer, is go out in nature, because nature has the power to heal.
It does.
You know who Wim Hof is?
I've not heard it, no.
Okay, so he's where is he from? Poland?
Something like that.
Yeah. Holds a ton of Guinness World Records for like swimming in cold, breathing, all this stuff. Short story, his wife took her life years ago, and he has 4 or 5 kids, and he went out into nature, and he's very fascinating. I think you would like a lot of what he does, but he talks about be out in nature. He does cold therapy, ice stuff. This dude's insane. He'll sit and he can defy medical things.
He can control his body temperature while he's in the cold water.
Gave him whatever would they inject him with, some type of I don't know, typhoid fever or something. They gave it to him, and his body rejected it. He sat there and just breathed, and all his other students did the same, and they all no symptoms whatsoever.
Yeah.
He can do all this and randoms because he can really harness. And he talked about the power of nature, and I guess he went out and does that. But I was going to ask you something like, from your professional standpoint, he says that we are a makeup of 11 generations back. So obviously we don't know 11 generations back. But to think of some of the people that you deal with and what you've studied, do you think that who we are today can resonate back past generations? Now, obviously, we have not met some of our previous generations, but if great-grandpa was in a war, grandpa was in a war, dad was in a war, now you may never even have met them. Then here you come along. Do you think those stressors can be passed through DNA and through the body, that those are inherently gifted to you from previous generations?
So let's talk. There's multiple levels of truth, right? Basic, simple level is that in pranic healing, the protocol is you test someone's energy and you get a baseline measurement. And then you take that baseline measurement and you can start cross-referencing it, maybe by asking yes and no questions, or feeling the strength, how much anger is there, how much peace is there, and different things like that. And so, of course, the more you practice this, and I've been doing this since 2014, 15, the more you practice it, the more refined your capacity to practice it. And so the more fine-tooth comb you can kind of weed through stuff. And so you can ask essentially the subconscious mind, which interacts with the nervous system and all of the anatomy, is this emotion or trapped issue or this trauma or this anger or this rage or whatever it is, your emotion or your issue. Yes, that's your issue. No, it's not your issue. Well, then whose is it?
Yes.
Is this issue inherited? You can test the energy. Is it inherited? And so also, very interestingly, something I've been toying with recently is the emotion code, which uses the pranic healing is my jam, but I've also been using the emotion code with muscle testing. I go to a doctor who does muscle testing, so I've always been intrigued by muscle testing. So it's essentially asking the same thing, and it's a little bit more physical for people, so it's a little bit easier for people to buy into that. Essentially, if I say a congruent or true statement, and I have somebody hold out their arm, I get a baseline strength test, and I say a true or congruent statement, I can begin talking to the subconscious mind. Is this your issue? Touch down the arm. A strong response is a yes. And so I through these tools, I have tracked back, did you inherit this issue? Yes. Did you inherit it from your mom? Yes. Did you inherit it from your dad? No. Did your mom inherit it from her parents? Yes. Did your mom inherit it from her dad? No.
Right,
Is it maternal? Yeah. Yes. Does it go back 3 generations? Yes. Does it go back 4 generations? Yes. Does it go back 5 generations? Yes. Does it go back 6? No. 5 generations.
So fascinating.
And some would say, or some do say, that you can even, and you may not believe in this, you may, whatever you want, just keep an open mind, that you also receive some of these tendencies, habits, pains, and suffrage from past lives.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so on a deeper level, level 1, level 2, deeper level, higher level of truth, the concept is, and so I grew up in a Christian church, and it was like, well, Christians believe in an eternal afterlife, but they don't believe what happened before that. And where on our timeline did the eternal life begin and end, or was it always there? And you get confused, and it's like, well, I have a tendency to agree more with the Buddhist style of there's multiple incarnations. That's why there's so much diversity, and that's why people have these tendencies that we've literally inherited from our family lines, and maybe your great-great-great-great-grandfather who started the shit is you.
Yes. I totally buy into that, man. And I think that's where
a lot of like Wim talks about and things and other stuff I read. But we've talked about it before that not everything that we inherently are is our fault, which is crazy to say and not taking the ownership. But DNA is very fascinating. What was I reading about the other day? Like one chunk of DNA holds how many like gigabytes of data. Yeah. And we're talking how much is made up of a human, and you're talking then going back, like
absolutely,
you're talking billions and billions and billions of things to think that you didn't just come from 2 people.
Right.
You came from 4, 8, 16. We can go way, way back to whenever the first. There's some chunk of 100 generations past us, and that's very fascinating. I think, man, maybe just smile sitting here listening to you talk about it, because it's true, and it's so fascinating because you take a part of that, and you don't hear many people who probably dive into that realm to pull it that far.
Yeah. We'll have to hold it real quick. Go ahead. We'll have to sit down one episode and go over.
I want you to do it to me.
I know, right? I know,
we can
for
do
real.
An experiment. Check it out.
For real.
After this, whatever.
I think that we should do a podcast one time and unearth our ancestry, because I did that the 23andMe.
Yeah.
So no plug, but that's what I used. And you talk about being an eye opener to where you're from as to where you thought you were from. It's there's something there.
Yeah.
There's something there that triggers something deep inside of you that goes, aha, now you know, you dumbass. Yeah. Like now you know where you came from. Yeah. So now you can start figuring out who the fuck you are.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Right. So anyway.
So one quick example, and this is the thing, is that then, like I was saying before, we reflect. Did it have a change? Did it not have a change? Because all these things are pretty abstract, and we get into the levels of truth and all this different stuff. And so just one simple example I'll use for myself is that, and not to get too graphic, but in one particular experience in Afghanistan, it was these kids, and a lot of not good things happened, right? And so I had this issue with kids, and even talking about Afghanistan at all was a huge, huge problem for me for a long time.
Sure.
And it had to do with this particular event. And so I was starting to get more proficient at pranic healing and being able to discern what was what and where it was coming from. And so probably the first and biggest eye-opening experience of like the utility of pranic healing for me, at least, and what I want to do and what I want to do for people and teach people about and help people with, is that I could test the energy. I was getting pretty proficient at sensing and feeling the energy. Test the energy. Is this figuring out what particular emotion? I thought it was fear, but it was actually a sense of terror or being terrorized. And I tested where it was on my body, and all of a sudden my knee was like really, 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 really big. And so I began to disintegrate and remove and cut away that particular issue. And all of a sudden I reached a tipping point where I could feel this rush of crap leave my knee. And again, with the rushing in of the blood, like there was a lack of good stuff there that needed to keep the knee healthy. And it was a complete and total sense of relief. It was just that my conscious mind or my subconscious mind needed to register what it was before it could get rid of it. And because when I think, at least in my reflection, when I realized what it was and where it was, and I collected enough data and information about it, I could then release it safely. And the energy of being terrorized or terror wouldn't overcome my nervous system again. It's like my nervous system had packed it in a safe spot where no one would look. And then I was able to let it go a little bit more freely and work with it. Whereas before I'd tried and it just wasn't working right. But
would you consider that shadow work? You think it's different? Are you familiar with shadow work?
No, I'm not.
So that shadow work, and Jeff, I'm not sure if you've heard about it or not, but I've read a little bit about it. It's really unearthing your demons and allowing yourself to confront them. Mm-hmm. Whether that's, man, I had a really horrible thought about those kids.
Yeah.
Or, man, I wish I could have done this to that guy.
Yeah.
Or maybe I did this to that guy. God, I wish I could take it back. I feel so bad now. It's dealing with all of those things. And a lot of the times it's things that you don't even know because they're tucked away nicely so you don't ever get to see them again. Your ego goes, oh, he can't see that shit. Put that over here. And before you know it, you're overflowing with shit that you can't see, and you can't help but start seeing shit. Yeah. So that's sort of what happened to me. It just fucking started boiling over.
Right.
I was like, fuck, I can't keep this up. Like, I've got to confront some shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's, so it sounds very similar. Again, there's so many different things and tools and stuff, and that's just, again, different strokes for different folks, and that's the huge, massive opportunity. It was just, for me, it was the process was being able to confirm or deny the presence or non-presence of that, where it was, what it was about through energy. But also, I've been learning in these recent weeks and a few months of applying that methodology again through muscle testing, because with the emotion code, because what I've found is that people, veterans and people seem to be open to a lot of things, actually. But even my Vietnam vets that I have, they seem to be a little bit more reluctant about the pranic healing stuff, but they'll allow me to muscle test them.
Yeah, that's
right.
We see that in martial arts.
Yeah.
Like, head instructor would pull people out of the crowd and do things like, oh, you think that, I can do this because I'm some martial artist. He goes, I can make you do the same thing. In all reality, like he'd stack bricks up and do demos. He goes, you could literally do the same thing I am with zero training. Yeah. It's all in the thought process of strength, but utilizing your strength to be so fine and pinpointed. But he would do the simple thing, like as you're doing, is like, all right, you're strong, right? Yeah, put your arm out. Oh, man, how strong are you? Yeah. Oh, look at you. Look. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but you're just weak. Yeah. And then he would sit there and put those thoughts and the negative thought process into the body, and he goes, I can break you down. Yeah. Simply with just words. Yep. Physically. Yeah. To show these, because we do demos and stuff for kids or like, big events and stuff. And it'd be like teaching people that your word is just as powerful to cut the human body, people, and teaching that, like, some of you may suffer physical ailments, but a word can have more damage than more physical things. Yeah. And that's cool that you kind of do, because that is true. It is so much easier for most people when you can like, oh, okay.
They feel how strong a congruent or true response is. And they're like, yeah, that's right. But then when it's a no, they just can't, their arm just goes down. Right. Because their nervous system is firing no, and it weakens the body. Yeah. And it's
like saying no when you're shaking your head yes. Right. Or vice versa, right? It's hard to do. Right. Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Yeah. So we're not done yet. Not by a long shot. So, okay. So the pranic healing. Yeah. So you started to integrate that into your daily work, right? Some people received it. Some people didn't. Some people do. Some people don't. Yep. Just an average, what do you think? How many people are open to the idea, and how many people say no on a percentage?
Sure. So truly for me, probably 85% are open, 15% are not. Oh, and
doing a good job.
The thing is that I feel like that has a good chunk to do with me and my disposition, my belief, my energy, mentality, attitude, capacity to explain it verbally, but also even my energy. Like in the Pranic healing community, the core meditation that kind of binds all the other meditations together that is practiced mostly is called meditation on twin hearts. And it is, of course, primarily loving and compassionate. And interestingly, the mind, the mental unit, collects things, categorizes them, pushes and pulls them apart, groups them, and organizes them, whereas the heart integrates things. The heart is the synthesizer. And so very interestingly, whenever I, again, begin presenting, I present this to groups, like on Scott Air Force Base, all these different places, and I lead and I talk. I give veterans a really hard time about, and soldiers a hard time about it, but I'm like, look, practicing a loving dispositioned meditation does not make you weak. It actually makes you stronger. And a super funny story is that I was getting a vasectomy, and it only takes about 15 minutes, right? And so
all funny stories should start like this.
Yeah. And so the doctor I had, they gave you a painkiller and a anti-anxiety medication. I've never had an anti-anxiety medication before. I took it, but I felt more of the painkiller, and I'm kind of chatty anyways, but it made me chatty. So I was talking to this dude, and he's asking me what I do, and we're getting into this very type of conversation deep real quick. And so I explained what I've just explained, and he's like, so you're telling me that you want Navy SEALs to be more loving. I don't want Navy SEALs. I want Navy SEALs to kill people. And I was like, well, the problem is that you're also taking the baggage of Navy SEALs. And Navy SEALs are a particular type of person that may be more dispositioned to be able to handle that stuff and run that regiment, and they're trained that way, and those are all good and wonderful things. But if you ignore the love aspect, that's eventually going to eat that person up, because I have been a therapist for Navy SEALs and super duper people, and not that you see one person and categorize them all in the same group, but people are people at the end of the day.
But I would say, why would you want that particular group to carry more baggage than the next?
Right.
That's not fair.
They don't understand
just because, that seems elite to you. Why would you want to put that burden on somebody?
And that was something very similar to my comment was, wouldn't you want someone that has more emotional capacity than a fractured emotional capacity? That's all you need to say. Because of the truth. And again, the heart is a synthesizer. The heart puts things back together. The way I explained it is that if your subconscious mind is made up of interlocking gears, and the problems, the mental health problems or even physical health problems are blockages in those gears, they're not operating properly, that love isn't a section of those gears. Love is the grease for all of those gears.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, man. And the integration part, allowing your heart to integrate the things that we talk about on here, whether it be meditation or acupuncture or therapy or whatever, it's like Jeff and I think we've talked about this before, the Bill Murray movie, Razor's Edge.
I think we did, yeah.
And he says at the top, he comes down and he talks to this head monk, and the monk says, well, what'd you learn after you've lived all this and you've gone up there and lived on the mountain by yourself? And he says, I learned that it's real easy to be a monk on the top of a mountain by yourself.
Yeah.
So all this shit we talk about, if we don't take it back into our homes or our businesses, our practices or schools or gyms, the fuck good is it?
Right.
Because we're just being selfish. Mm-hmm. Like, I just want this world to be great for me now.
Yeah.
Nah, man, this is just like the stories that you might have been read from the Bible. If you don't do one after you saw one and you don't teach one, then why the hell were you ever shown how to do one, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I had an old boss in the military who used to tell me, see one, do one, teach one.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You pay attention, so you know how to do it. Then you do it. Then you damn well better teach somebody.
The old I learned this from my former boss. 1 + 1 is 3. Exactly what you're saying is, I got one, but there should be 3 at the end of this when it's all said and done. Yep,
absolutely, man, absolutely. So, okay. So that's a fantastic percentage, by the way. 85% that's huge to me.
That I'd say maybe I was thinking 60-40.
Dude, I was thinking like 50-50.
So well, it's not to its challenge, and it has been a long time coming. You've got to think, for 5, 6, 7 years, I have been thinking about these things and practicing them and pitching them to, and I love my veterans, but the thing is that veterans have a tendency to not necessarily be closed-minded about all things, but they have a closed mind about some things. And whenever it's closed, that shit is very, very closed. And abstract things like energy healing has a tendency to be one of those things.
Yeah.
So again, if there is a baseless belief and baseless closed door, that shit is one of those cheap-ass air-filled doors that really you can probably knock on and knock down. Especially, again, you do the research, and it's not just I had some small effects on me. I had some major stuff for me. I was proving it day after day with veterans. And going back to what we just talked about, that I was sitting in a class one day listening to this presenter that was a Pranic healer. And they're called master Pranic healers. They've mastered a significant degree of Pranic healing. And so he was talking that, if you had the cure for cancer, would you just sit on it? And if you've been helped, why don't you go help? And those, in various ways, he was talking about that and driving that home. And I couldn't get that out of my brain. And so I had to do something about it. So not doing something about it was never an option. Yeah. It was then... I had despised advertising and what I thought was marketing until I was forced to pitch better to veterans. And not only that, the vet centers and the veterans that I work with in a clinical setting never pay $1. And so when there's no money buy-in, sometimes I find myself doing a lot of extra legwork to convince them that it's cool to feel better.
Right.
And then you got to pitch this stuff that actually works, like Pranic healing, for example. And so I had to really rewire my opinion about marketing, learn to market better, read all these marketing books, and become more proficient in it and begin to master it. So then I could present things in a compelling way, but yet be rational, but also be very, very hands-off and not be attached to the result, to just say, there it is, leave it alone, and let that truth smash in to their bullshit story they have built up in their head.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so they're spinning their wheels. They're doing all the extra work to fight off these uncomfortable feelings, because all it is their subconscious programming. Like if we said that Eastern yogis and meditative people couldn't levitate or could levitate, we would say no, because our Western brain has been programmed that that's not possible. Whereas that shit might be true. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that I'm open to the possibility of it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
you can't just say no, because you don't know.
Yeah.
None of us do. But man, so many of us are so locked up that we just keep saying we know what's going on. Right. We're miserable. And some people are addicted to that pain.
Yeah.
And they only know that pain. They only remember it. So how the fuck else are they going to live, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that when those people meet somebody like you, just like you so poignantly said earlier, they don't buy the product. They buy the fucking person.
Absolutely.
They say, hey, he's the fucking proof's in the pudding.
The truth of sales. Most people don't buy, they buy an emotion, but they don't buy the product because of the product. They buy it because they had the connection with the person who's talking about it.
Yep. I've experienced that for many years, selling back into the federal government. I've never, ever had an account that wasn't a good friend.
Yeah.
And it wasn't by design. It was just like what you said, like something stuck in your head where they said, you got to pay it forward. You got to show somebody. It was the same way. Nobody ever told me I had to do those things. There was just this baked in desire to help people feel better.
My best retailers were always people I had a better connection with and still will talk to this day, because we just connected on a different level than the rest of them.
Yeah.
Right, man. Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I always knew, I remember where I was sitting in this small apartment we had. It's like 450 square feet. And I was reflecting on my year and kind of setting new goals for the year. And I realized that my year had sucked and that I sucked. And that I knew that if I had another year like this, that if I ever got married and had kids, that I could even see it in the future, sitting on the porch watching my kids play. But I was always angry, irritated, paranoid, always looking for security, always trying to hyper-vigilant my way out of everything.
Yep.
And I could never sit back and experience true joy and experience that moment. And I was like, truly, if I can't have that, then life isn't worth living. And it's not like I want to be dramatic and say, I was thinking about suicide and all these different things, but the truth of the matter is it was never emotional for me. It was mathematical. if I can't do this, there's no point in being here. I would rather challenge. If the devil is real, I'd rather die and go challenge and fight the devil and do something than live the way I'm living.
I agree.
So it was do this now, or we're not going to do this. And so that was another, again, big turning point for me. And when that inner change happens on such a deep level, when you come against people that have a closed mind and aren't open to things, their bullshit shield is very thin, whereas my conviction is its depth is endless.
Yes.
And so, and it's not to say that I'm impenetrable and I've always had success. I have had handfuls of veterans, whenever I pitch these things, just laugh in my face about it. And that's okay. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, again, proof's in the pudding. Yeah. I am producing results, even not just with veterans, not just with myself. My wife calls me and says our kid's teeth, she or he is teething. And so you just apply pranic healing for a couple minutes. And my wife's like, I knew exactly when you started, because all of a sudden, so my daughter's not teething. My son is young and it's teething. And all of a sudden he just stopped. And looked up and he was ready to chill again.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
That's such good, integration, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see one, do one, teach one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. All right. So let's, so we've talked a lot about, or we've said the words pranic healing a lot. Can we talk about it? Can we say what it is and why you love it so much?
Yeah. So it is a no-touch healing modality. So it doesn't require any touch. Like Reiki, a lot of people know, there is distance Reiki, I guess, but primarily Reiki is hands-on, whereas pranic healing is not. The idea behind it is that the mind is the powerhouse and your intention is everything. So they train you to use the power of intention, use your mind to remove and will target and remove dirty and diseased energies is what they call it. And so these energies essentially just create blockages in the energetic system of your body, which essentially is the blueprint for the physical system. So everything, of course, would happen in the energy world before it happened in the physical world. And so you are tracking down abnormalities. And again, you're taught to feel energy. And once people get in it and learn about it, and they have that knowledge stored in their conscious and subconscious, usually they can feel it. And so they begin physically feeling that stuff. And again, the classes are very experiential, so you're practicing, you're seeing results, and so it helps with your confidence. And they force you to get out of your bubble and not practice with the same person, so there's all these practical tools along with it. But what it is, like a session, for example, I would interview people, what are our goals, and what does success look like, because I like to see physical results, and I like them to see physical results. A lot of times with first clients, if they've never done anything like that, I'll do something pain related so that we can remove the pain and see physical results right then and there. And then we'll start having a more detailed conversation about what their limitations are or what they think that they are. And we will scan. So the different energy centers or chakras essentially correspond to physiological functions, physical functions. They moderate and are responsible for, but they're also responsible for psychological functions and spiritual functions. And so it then makes sense why, for example, like anger and irritation, there's been a lot of research and studies, usually get stored in the liver and the gallbladder, because the energy center that has its root, actually, it's this solar plexus energy center that comes out, its root actually loops around into the liver, and it manages and moderates the liver and the stomach and the upper portion of the GI. And so a lot of stress, a lot of tension tends to dirty and weaken or inflame the liver. And so I would, for example, clean that out, but also probably clean the liver, the gallbladder, test and retest to see what the changes have been, if it's strong, even what emotions are in there. There's ways to test what emotions are actually stored in there. So yeah, those are the specific parts, but the powerful and simple part of it is that the first section of typical pranic healing session is actually doing what they call general sweeping. Head to toe, you're doing general sweeping, nothing specific. And even in the textbook, it says that doing that alone can oftentimes heal up to 70% of the particular issue.
Wow.
Because so we take that idea and we look at basic cognitive psychological research, and we see that the average human being has about 60,000 thoughts a day, and 80 or 90% of those are recycled. And so
it's a lot.
It's a lot. So it's the same mentality, same theme, same feel, just kind of repeated. And that's generally. And so the curious thing is that those thoughts and emotions, if we have this energy field, which has actually been observed by Heart Math Institute, they can actually map it out, and you can go Google them and look at the visuals or whatever. So literally we have this biomagnetic field that extends in all directions, and those thoughts and emotions exist in physical form in our energy. And so that's why, for example, you can get a feel for what someone is thinking. It's not just about their body language. It's that we're receiving all this biofeedback from their energy because our energies are actually touching each other.
Dude. Yeah.
It can feel when you get someone that drains you.
Well, that's a problem.
Push you like, oh my God, I'm like on fire. Like,
well, if you're empathetic, or if you're referred to as an empath, and you're extra sensitive to that, hear me now. It is like turning the volume up to 100, but with feelings.
Right.
And when you have people approaching you, they're just flooding you with their feelings.
Mario on a mushroom.
Fuck, man, it becomes overwhelming, and you pop, dude. You just pop. You can't take it no more.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
So the word empath, you could replace that with receptive. So if people are receptive to energy, they're open to it. And so just a little bit more technicalities of pranic healing that, have you ever been walking along and all of a sudden you whip your head and you make eye contact with someone that happens to be staring at you? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
And so the interesting thing is that why on earth would you whip around and then not look at their shoulder, but you make exact eye contact every time? Well, the reason is that if we have an attachment, for example, since we're having this conversation, generally there would be this energetic cord that would run from my solar plexus to your solar plexus to your solar plexus to my solar plexus, and we would be all exchanging energies and feels and understandings and thoughts and ideas, that our words are just masks for the actual energetic idea that is traveling to you, and your body is absorbing it and understanding it and processing it in your physical brain so you can put a physical structure to it. And so whenever that example is happening, someone is looking at the back of our head for long enough, it creates this link, this literal actual cord. And I don't see them all the time, but I've seen them. It looks like this straw, like a translucent straw that travels from one person to another. And once that cord pierces our aura and energy and travels deeper into our aura because it gets thicker as it goes, at some point our nervous system trips and there's a threat. And so we turn and we look directly at the threat, which is directly at the eyes, because our energy is actually already calibrating and recalibrating what is physiologically going on in our surroundings.
Before you even know it, and your gut's freaking out, your heart's racing, and all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful to know because, I know at least I've experienced these kinds of things on multiple levels. And, when you're younger, both in your practice or just in years, you're not open enough. You haven't experienced enough to realize, oh man, I've tripped going up the stair a lot of times. Maybe I need to fix this rug or whatever it is, Yeah. You just don't get it. You got to live, you got to experience some shit before you can actually learn how to, get through it.
Yeah. I remember the first, because in martial arts, my instructor had been to Japan and trying a career. He's done the traditional and lived the Eastern life and has that. And we would do energy stuff. And I remember the first time, and I'm like, I'm open martial arts. So I'm, open, but the first time doing it, and, we would sit here and he's like, okay, you got a ball.
Yeah.
Start off small.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you're building it. And like, you should start feeling heat between your hands. And then if you pry down, you start looking at your hands are going to look like you slapped the shit out of stuff.
Yeah.
And they become beet red. He goes, all right, you're going to get somebody else. Okay. Give him the ball.
Yeah.
Whoa, I'm flipping cold now.
Yeah,
it's
man.
like sitting here with other, guys I trained with and taking the energy. And then like we had guys, it's like they're dead from the legs down. They're just nervous system, body would not, they're like trees.
Yeah.
But then you got others, it's like you hit them in the, like their system's legs down, like, oh my God, like slightest tap would take them.
Yeah.
But then like we would always joke like at competitions, you'd bow to your opponent and be like like do swipes to the energy lines of the body, because you're within exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're within their realm, because I believe you're like 3 feet apart to start.
Yeah.
In martial art, traditional, not fighting, but you're within 3 foot realm. So you're within like enough. You're touching that you can mess with another human's energy.
Right.
But it was the funniest things. We'd always do this stuff, and his wife could always see auras and stuff like that. She's like, "Yeah, you're black." I always laughed. I'm like, "What?" She goes, "But that was like my first experiences of doing it." And he's like, "If you're really good with your energy, you could be able to go to a plant and make them move."
Yeah.
Like taking this, because you will connect within these things. And you know, and it's the craziest of things, but like to witness this stuff and actually be a part of it, but to feel it, like you're saying, to do the ball thing. If you're listening, I wouldn't practice this, because you could drain the hell out of yourself. You could just literally take your, battery from full to empty, but you literally just taking your hands, not even touching, you can feel generated of heat. And it's widely, I could sit here and I could literally pass it to Jeremy, and we could just sit here and go through all of it. It's a crazy thing what you say, but like if people are open to it,
there's a whole world out there that people. It's almost like this is our world, this is the world you believe in.
Yeah, it's
what if I told you there's another one right behind you?
Like Doctor Strange, right? When they I can't remember what they call when she pops him out of his body. Not metaphysical, but whatever the actual term they used in the movie, but. It's almost to that extent that you're going into the energy field of your body while you're seeing your physical self, and kind of having that, almost like chi running, where you're having that moment of out of body experience, but you're the energy. You're not like the spirit leaving.
Get this. I'll tell you a quick story, and we'll get back to yours. Yeah. But I think this pertains today. I was a young child, and I was watching an even younger child, my little brother. So I would have been probably 8 years old at the time. Maybe pushing 9, and he was probably 3 or 4. So I'm watching him, but I'm laying down, and I probably shouldn't be laying down. I'm getting tired, right? But I'm a young kid. I'm watching TV. He's okay. I fall asleep, but not without watching myself fall asleep.
Yeah.
And not only did I watch myself fall asleep, I watched my little brother do everything he was doing while I slept.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the event passed, just as quick as it came, I'm up on my feet looking around me like, what's real? And I look, I'm like, holy shit, there it is. Yeah. It's everywhere. I've never in all of my life thought that something like that would be possible. And to this day, I don't know how that happened, but I think it set a tone for me to just go, you know what, man, anything's possible, dude. Yeah. I don't know what's real, but anything's possible. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know.
Yeah. And so something to kind of piggyback off of that. In my office, I keep the lights low. I don't use the fluorescent lights. I keep it real chill. Even my coworkers like to come in and sit down. It's got a good feel to it. And of course, it's the energy and the especially the loving meditations that I do frequently. And so, anyways, I was doing bereavement, and this I believe it was a cousin, and this was years ago. A cousin that was like a brother to this guy, a veteran, had killed himself, and so we're doing this work together, and all of a sudden, and I don't see stuff all the time, but all of a sudden, I see this ghost-like wraith thing walk up beside me and get almost in between me and my guy. And it stands there, and I didn't know what his cousin looked like. And I was like, and I was just curious and trying to observe and not freak out, right? And I was like, so just please describe the build of your cousin to me. And he's like, he describes like Alan. He's this big-shouldered tank, or like Shane, right?
Alan is a tank.
Yeah. And so this big-shouldered tank dude was just standing here. And so I didn't know what to do, but the only thing that I could sense that maybe of some help was closure, right? And so I was like, so tell me, what has this all meant to you? Because I had read that after people pass away, sometimes if it's abrupt, they can be confused as to if they're alive or if they're dead, and it's this thing. And not to get too far into it, but It was just, I don't know what happened. I didn't actually see the guy after that particular experience, and I didn't say, hey, this dude is standing here or anything like that. Right. I just, helped kind of process and try to tie up some loose ends, and that was that.
Yeah.
But it was as real as day,
Yeah. Yeah. When it happens, you're like, okay, that's a part of me now.
Yeah.
Like that experience has helped to shape who I'm going to be.
Uh-huh.
And you don't know that as a kid or as a young man or woman, but when it happens and you look back in retrospect, I'm sorry, it's clear as it can be, plain as day. It's right there in front of you. Oh, that was the moment that I realized that everything I'd been told wasn't all there is.
Right.
And it's funny because the same people that would believe conspiracy theories would not believe that this type of work would be helpful.
Right.
So it's the same. How is that part of the brain not doing the same shit, man? Right. Like you already believe that there could be some shit that you don't understand. This is just another lane in that highway.
Yeah.
Just more shit that you don't understand. And there's endless highways to go.
Yeah.
That we don't understand. So I think it's really cool what you're doing. And I hope people go by the droves.
Yeah.
We should get us a dump truck and just fill it up with people. Let's go see Nate, man. He's got some work to do on you. And Jeff and I can get them all buttered up at first.
Yeah. Pull the bus in.
Yeah, but we will go and we will, just to tell you, we will link, your site at the end so people will know how to get a hold of you. Mm-hmm. But so anyway, so you get back into the pranic healing, and now you're not only are you doing therapy work and the pranic healing, but now you get into doing work outside of your day job, and you start doing stuff the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's where you're at right now.
Yes.
So you both have a day job and you're coaching. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the coaching.
Yeah. So actually, it was a natural evolution out of the therapy that I was doing. I was finding that therapy and the way you're trained and the way it goes is generally, it tends to focus on the past, a lot on the past. And I was realizing that that is valuable and helpful, but that I don't necessarily want to go at a sprint. People need to learn the lessons and grow, and that takes time and love and understanding and a ton of action. But I didn't want to sit and analyze the past. I had personally spent years figuring out a lot of my past and a lot of my issues. And the truth of the matter is that as satisfying as that was, I had a crazy amount more success doing action. Yeah. And so here's the juxtaposition is that here's pranic healing, and here I am preaching a crazy amount of massive, consistent, habitualized action. And so it's about kind of bringing these two together to maximize the process. And so my therapy had been coming off more coachy. And so I had a private therapy practice. But again, I was constantly kind of attracting veterans, soldiers, and cops. Right. And so I realized that there was a natural roadblock that was annoying and kept coming up where the constant focus on the past was not super helpful. We needed to talk about the past and understand some aspects of the past, but it necessarily wasn't crazy helpful and necessary for what the work that we were doing and the goals and objectives we had. And keep in mind, these are paid clients, not non-paid clients that are interested in bringing the shit and getting results. And so I changed my LLC from a therapy-based and insurance therapy-based practice to a coaching practice. And the results were phenomenal. It finally all made sense because, yes, I may reflect on the past, but through the lens of what do we want to do about it and where do we want to go from here? Because, if you look at it like on a pie chart, understanding or knowing what's going on is a piece of the pie, but only as it relates to the action and results that we're looking for and how we're going to get those results. Because energy healing for me and what I do in meditation is another piece of the pie, and massive, consistent freaking action is the other piece of the pie. And that's how we flip that around, and that's the regiment that I do. Yeah. And as challenging as the pandemic has been, I haven't had a blip of change because as much as I would prefer to be in person, I can do every bit of this because, again, pranic healing is a no-touch healing modality. It can be done over a distance. And so doing it on Zoom or video conferencing software, it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. I think we need to schedule a day where you and I both get hooked
I think
up here.
have them back. We'll do this in person.
Yeah, I think it'd be rad.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'd love to do it.
I haven't had, like I said, my coach's wife was like the first one to kind of do that to all of us, lay us down, pull the colors and look at our chakras and auras and go, ooh, okay, yeah. And then she can interpret it. But she's one of those people that, like you said, walks in a room, she feels every ounce of energy from every person, any living creature in the room she feels.
Yep.
Oh, that plant needs water. What? Without being going, yep, its soil's dry. Like she could feel every living creature in a room. Right. It's insane. And it could take her, she could be here, and then all of a sudden she could be just drained.
Yeah. It's there's a fine line, but I should say it's a massive threshold that a lot of people have. Like you just take it and you take it and you take it and you take it. And most people don't even realize what they're doing.
Right.
You know,
some don't have a natural shield that can repel it. It's just you're open at all times.
That's why you have to learn about it and set boundaries. You know, they're just, the boundaries are critical. You know, if you don't have boundaries, you're exhausted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then you don't know why you're exhausted. Yeah. No, now I don't want to go out and hang around people. I don't feel good when I hang around people. Oh, bullshit, man.
Yeah.
You're just doing the wrong shit.
I've had my days of just nonstop being on the phone, video conferencing with people, and it's like I've dealt with people for 10, 12 hours.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with another human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I took all of what they had all day long, and now it's in me, and it's like, I got to get rid of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And typically your body just wants to go, I'm going to shut off.
Yeah. That's why the military and LE world is so amazingly frightening to me. It's also frighteningly amazing in both regards, but just the fact that you get trained, do your job, you take away a lot more than you're able to give.
Yeah.
Every day you take more home, more baggage. Where are the people in the LE and military career fields, even first responders to all of them? Where are the people where are the lobbyists for this?
Yeah.
Where are the lobbyists for helping people pre-PTSD?
Yeah.
You know, pre-anxiety, pre-depression, pre-suicide. Where are the people crying for those lives?
Right.
I don't know, and that's a hypothetical question, obviously, but I don't see it.
Right.
I sure didn't get any counseling or any grief, anything inside the military. It was my job to stay out of that office so that I could still carry my weapon.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be better to think of, obviously you've done a lot of training, that if a fraction of your training was dished out to military, law enforcement as part of your day-to-day training to deal with what you see.
Yes.
Because you're going to see shit that most people see in a movie or TV show, like me, civilian. I've not seen any of this stuff.
Right.
I've only seen what I've seen on a, movie type thing.
Totally.
And it's one thing for me to analyze it, but I can only comprehend. But to think that if you had any bit of that training to take it, analyze it, learn how to turn it and use it, what fraction of individuals would not have PTSD, have these other issues that come about?
Yeah, but how much more trained of a workforce would they have too?
Right.
A much more prepared workforce.
Resiliency is what you're building.
Right, and we said that earlier. Yeah,
well, like you said, do you think if you had this training now, what you do you think you could have continued in law enforcement? Or do you think if you could have found the happy balance?
Absolutely. So this is my coaching business. The disposition of it is focused around this idea of self-mastery and resiliency. And the curious thing is that these are all fantastic questions and questions I've wrestled with for a long time and talked to a lot of veterans, a lot of different people about. But the curious thing is that if you look at the military first, the average military service is 3 to 6 years.
Yep.
And so if I were to somehow be the military in all 4 branches and encompass that within all of me and make decisions, and I would look at human beings as units that are going to work for me, if I only get 3 to 6 years out of this unit, I'm only going to give that unit the bare minimum training because I need to maximize my return.
I would think about the government. How much hundreds of thousands did I sink into you for 3 to 6 years when I don't get that return on investment?
Right. And you're going to go off, and I'm not going to get any other stuff for the next 30 years of your
workforce. And we'll continue to pay for you, potentially, if you've earned your other benefits that you've seen.
Yeah.
So, you're essentially you're $1 million walking away,
Yeah.
if not more, at 3 to 6 years.
Yeah.
When I could have turned you into something for 20,
Right.
and I could have
Yeah.
essentially pulled that back to be a better resource.
Yeah, gotten a better return for your dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
So they don't have a lot of there, and again, maybe they're looking at it and they're not including like VA disability benefits and having to pay that unit thousands or millions of dollars over the course of a lifetime, for example. But they're looking at it in this short-term mindset, in this very business widget-based mindset of, I'm going to take American masculine norms, pump them up, to juice up this widget to go execute and be angry and dehumanize people. But if we study dehumanizing people, you have to dehumanize yourself before you can dehumanize someone else. So we think it's cool to have this rough and gruff jokes and all this stuff about military culture and policing culture and American masculine culture. But as much as we are belittling other people or whatever, we are hurting ourselves. And so that's what we're not getting. And again, from the military, big military's perspective, it's simply not financially viable to train self-mastery, to train the whole human being. And from a policing perspective, sure, they might get them for 20 or 30 years, but that's not guaranteed. So the policing is going to chew them up and spit them out. And that's just the way it's going to be. Right. So again, they don't have a vested interest in helping these people grow up and grow up their emotions, grow up their thought processes to be able to get a higher caliber, not get a higher, but grow a higher caliber human being that has more mastery over their thoughts, more mastery over their emotions. So again, if it's like, did the thoughts or emotions, I talk about this a lot with people, did the thoughts or emotions come first? Are we trying to wrangle the thoughts to control the emotions, or emotions control the thoughts? Well, did the chicken come before the egg? It's all confusing. All I'm here to say is that if you can manage and control more of your emotions will eventually pan out and produce your emotion. Rather, you manage your thoughts, your thoughts will eventually pan out and align, and they will produce more purposefully their emotions. Those two together will produce your words. Those three together will produce your actions. Those three together, the four together will produce your habits. Those five together will produce your behaviors. That produces your character. That produces your quality of life, your income, all of these different things, your satisfaction in your relationships, your ability to be a husband, a wife, a human being, all these different things. And it all comes down to these thoughts and these emotions.
Very stoic.
Yes, very stoic.
The way of, you know, simple thought processes.
Right.
Letting your rage be controlled by somebody else.
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
You now control me.
Right. We are this giant switchboard. And it goes, I think you mentioned on a previous episode, Viktor Frankl.
Yep.
So it comes back to this switchboard that we have on our chest, basically, and this switchboard is our subconscious programming. Again, 60,000 thoughts a day, 80 or 90% of them are recycled, meaning that we have 80 or 90% of these thoughts that we have are essentially buttons. This situation, this person walks up to person A and pushes this button, elicits a reaction, uncontrolled reaction. Whereas this Viktor Frankl, one of the key points to his Man's Search for Meaning, as you've already elucidated in one of those past episodes, talks about between any stimulus and response in our environment, between any happening or event or word or thing that happens to us, and our reaction or response to it is a gap in time. And that gap in time is our opportunity to choose our response instead of just blindly reacting. Now, that gap may be very, very small, but what I'm here to hammer home is that things like meditation is nothing more than mental training and mental discipline that can help, and Frankl doesn't talk about this, but widening that gap.
Yep.
And the more we manage our thoughts and produce better emotions and produce better words and produce better actions, produce better habits, and the more we meditate and learn more about ourselves and reflect and grow our awareness and do all these things simultaneously, again, with the advent, for example, of pranic healing or other healing modalities and meditation and float and all this other stuff, it coalesces into being able to widen that gap a lot more to eventually, hopefully one day or one lifetime, we will reach saint status to where we just live in that gap. Everything is that gap.
Your quote-unquote nirvana if
you're
not already experiencing it. But no, it's like I told you, going back to the old samurai saying, going back to Victor's is, everything can be accomplished in 7 breaths. Obviously, that's much longer than this, depending on how you take a breath, but that reaction should be solvable within 7 breaths. And it's not, oh, you punched me and here we go. It should be, well, why did you just hit me? What's going on? Filter these, one of those 60,000 thought processes. It all goes hand in hand, and it's crazy to think of, okay, past the samurais, Stoics, Victor, Common, all these guys, and, modern philosophy and, therapy that y'all stole a little something, which everything is.
Yep.
You stole something from each other, but they all can align from now till whomever had the first thought of, let's analyze the human brain and thought process.
We are such a young, naive, gullible, angry, and immature nation. We're only a few hundred years old, I mean, a couple hundred really, but, officially, but, it's crazy to think just how many of those attributes we all share.
We're the babies of the world.
We are. And we've got a rattle, and we can yell it, or we can shake it loud, and we can yell loudly. We do all those things. I really hope that, the things that you bring to the table, stuff that we talk about on the show, or whatever else may thump you in the back of your head, I hope something gets people to start understanding that they are still babies.
Yeah.
We are still babies. We are barely even crawling, and people are trying to run. And then when they see someone running, well, I got to run too now.
Yeah.
No, you don't, motherfucker. You got to learn how to crawl. And if you never learn how to crawl and walk and all those other things and jog, your run's going to be messed up. So you do still need to go back to the beginning and learn how to do it all over again. And I know that's a very simplistic way of putting it, but that's basically what we're all talking about.
And it's another way to say it is that try to maintain and strive towards a learning disposition. And constantly have that openness, and not that you need to take everything hook, line, and sinker or listen to everybody's crap, but when you hear something, work on not allowing your biases and your past programming, which comes everybody from the major people in their life, in their early life, and which came from their people and their people. So their old ways of thinking, they're outdated. Totally. The shit needs to be updated, but we don't want to just update it with anything. We need to be purposeful. So we need to be reflective. So we need to be responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consistently.
Yes.
And again, it's like the trouble is that like energy healing and the meditation group and the total action and Jocko Willink and extreme ownership and the take everything as a responsibility, they all seem to be in separate camps, but really they need to be not congealed into this one thing. I don't think our universe, I don't think our nation and our culture and the world is necessarily ready for that yet, but we need to be supporting each other more.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic place to start.
And maybe because you can benefit, but also what you do benefit someone else, right? We all need to do that more.
Take a string from everything.
Yeah.
Boom. I like that.
Well, if you put into a little further context, you take that string and I take a little from the energy. I take some therapy. I take a little from leadership of Jocko or other things. And I develop this quilt, but I take those things that work for me personally, as I'm sure you kind of teach, the individuals you work with, you give them all these different facets. There's your quilt. This works for you. Yeah. Okay, cool. Next patient comes in. We got one square. We got a ways to go. We can't even cover our feet yet. You're taking and you're finding as you do these things like, that really doesn't work for me. That does not, it's taking to quote unquote, make this blanket to comfort yourself to then, I'm comforted, I'm healed, I can kind of go back out.
Yeah. And that closed mind mentality, we don't think that we have it, but it's like a closed room. That's what produces a fanatic. And people don't think that they're fanatical, but when they allow one thing to completely define something for them, that is the definition of a fanatic. Yeah. And so we just see it and often hear about it as a religious fanatic, but what's happened is that person's walked into that box of religion and allowed those walls, whatever's written on them, to govern every thought, every experience that they have, and that's the end goal. So their energy and their energy centers and the spiritual part of them, the soul, whatever you want to call it, shuts down and is in this box, and it sits in that box.
Yeah.
And it stagnates.
Yeah, stays there. People, 70-year-old men stagnate, still sitting there. Yeah, it's rough, man. But, if you're listening, whoever you are, there's hope. I mean, you don't have to go at this shit alone.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Jesus, you there's so many different avenues that you can take now to just start to get better. And I'm not saying you're bad, or you're wrong, or you need fixing. you probably haven't seen your full potential.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think any of us have, and we're just starting to crack the shell.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about consciousness, that's a good beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
As Keith said, we're in that wheat field. We just don't see forward. We can look back to see what we've knocked down to get forward. You just don't see ahead because there's been no path laid yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And it's like you said, you constantly look in the past, but you're also trying to find people's goals and forward. You're trying to mow down that wheat to create the new path.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Well, I tell you what, man, I think we've gotten to that point for this time, but I think we would love to have you back on.
Absolutely, dude. This was...
Yeah. Can we tell people right now where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, go right ahead.
So you can find me. My website is my name and coaching. So it's Nathan Ferguson, Ferguson coaching. You can also find Nathan Ferguson Coaching on Instagram and Facebook.
Very good.
Cool.
So all the usual suspects.
Right.
Good for you, man.
Awesome.
Right on. Well, we couldn't be more pleased, I think.
Time flew, dude.
I know. We're already right under 2 hours, but amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Very thought-provoking. And a lot of it is really good to hear from another human, because we talk about a lot of this stuff here, and you don't get a lot of external people in right now because of the virus or whatever. But this has been just flat out amazing.
Good to have a professional take it further than things that we've mentioned.
Totally.
And how you're applying it to actual people who, you know, are using
for years and thousands of them.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think this is the first of hopefully many visits. And we thank you.
Yes,
You're
absolutely.
welcome. Thank you.
Hope
It's
you have
tons of fun. I love talking about this stuff. I love connecting with people.
Yeah.
We
It's
couldn't tell
refreshing.
at all. No.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
your passion, dude. When you listen back to this, just sitting here like across from you, like it's like, dude, this dude is driven by this.
Absolutely. And you know it. Like whenever you enter a room, like you said, you can feel it. It's not bullshit. So if you can feel the energy, there's got to be a way to manipulate the energy.
Right.
Promise you guys will feel it.
And that's what's up.
Yep.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Nathan. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Bye.
Not too loud, not too loud.